ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar. Good evening, and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our major stories. Chadian President Déby Itno receives the 2026 African Peace Prize for effective management of political and humanitarian efforts. Over 400 fuel tankers arrive in Mali following months of hydrocarbon shortage. Nigeria celebrates fallen heroes on Armed Forces Remembrance Day.
We need to take care of the dead ones left behind.
God has been there for us, is always with us.
And in Liberia, a new maritime bill sparks nationwide debate. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Abdullahi Hassan.
Glad to have you join us. Newslink begins in Chad, where President Mohamed Idris Déby Itno has been named the winner of the 2026 African Peace Prize, as announced by the African Peace Conference. This recognition is attributed to his effective management of the political transition in Chad and his humanitarian efforts in welcoming Sudanese refugees. President Déby received the Peace Prize on Wednesday, highlighting his commitment to peace building and his support for those fleeing the conflict in Sudan. Augustine Colley reports.
The announcement was made by the African Conference for Peace following a unanimous decision by the Prize Committee meeting at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, hosted by the University for Peace. In its announcement, the committee states that its decision is based on a thorough review of these applications and an analysis of reports prepared by various African organizations. The announcement emphasizes that the selection of President Mohamed Idris Déby Itno recognizes his policies, which demonstrate a high degree of humanitarian and national responsibility. This includes efforts to strengthen national unity and adapt dialogue as a strategic approach to resolving political and regional disputes. Since assuming power, President Déby Itno has focused on reconciling the various factions within Chad, promoting national reconciliation and combating extremism, including cross-border crimes. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and humanitarian organizations operating in eastern Chad welcomed the president's decision to open the borders to hundreds of thousands of Sudanese refugees fleeing the war. Data indicates that 40 to 45% of the refugees were directly integrated into local communities, with Chadian villages generously sharing their homes, wells, and schools without any conditions. This spirit of solidarity led the United Nations to describe Chad as a rare example of African generosity towards refugees, despite limited resources, an effort that has saved hundreds of thousands of lives.
Augustine Colley filed that report. In Mali, authorities have received around 400 fuel tankers to alleviate the country's fuel shortage. The supply, which arrived in Bamako on Thursday, comes after several months of ongoing tensions in the hydrocarbon market, particularly in the capital. Imoradet completes the story.
This latest fuel supply comes in a complex economic and security context marked by logistical difficulties, regional constraints, and strong pressure on domestic demand. Since the beginning of the week, the effects of this influx of fuel have already been felt in Bamako and its surrounding areas. According to close sources in Bamako, the queues at gas stations are decreasing significantly and fuel is becoming increasingly available in several neighborhoods of the capital. Technical services and industry stakeholders reassure that supplies will continue uninterrupted with better organization of convoys and enhanced coordination between the relevant state structures. This positive dynamic is attributed in particular to the combined efforts of the Malian armed forces mobilized to secure strategic access, as well as to the personal involvement of the highest authorities in the country. In light of this gradual improvement, the Crisis Coordination and Management Center stepped in to denounce the spread of false information on social media. These rumors allege a new fuel shortage and long queues already observed at some gas stations. However, the Crisis Coordination and Management Center clarifies that this information is unfounded and aims to sow panic, provoke unnecessary gatherings, and discredit the government's efforts in energy supply.
Immorated reports in there. Talking transnational crime, several African countries, including 3 from West Africa, have been delisted by the European Union's high-risk jurisdiction on money laundering and terrorism financing. These countries include Nigeria, Mali, and Burkina Faso. The EU, in a statement, said the decision is expected to ease cross-border transactions and improve investor confidence. Sankule Janko has more in the following report.
The updated list published on the European Commission's website highlighted Nigeria as one of the countries delisted. Nigeria's removal from the Financial Action Task Force grey list in 2025 followed a series of anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing reforms. Under the new decision, enhanced due diligence requirements applied to transactions involving Nigeria will be lifted from January 29, 2026, subject to approval by the European Parliament. Reacting to the development, Nigeria's Minister of State for Finance, Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite, described the decision as a major boost for the economy. Other countries delisted are Burkina Faso, Mali, Mozambique, South Africa, and Tanzania. With the lifting of enhanced due diligence requirements, banks, exporters, fintechs, and other businesses in the delisted countries' transactions with European partners are expected to face fewer compliance hurdles. It should be noted that states classified as high risk often face higher transaction costs, delayed payments, tighter correspondent banking relationships, and reduced foreign investment.
Sankule Janko reports in there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live on WADR.org and on YouTube and Facebook at WADR. The Ivorian legislature is set to be inaugurated on Saturday, January 17, 2026. Ahead of the opening session for the new assembly, former Prime Minister Patrick Ashi is set to become the new president of the assembly. Ashi's nomination was the outcome of a meeting between President Alassane Ouattara and elected lawmakers from the ruling RHDP party, which won a landslide victory in the December 2025 legislative elections. Christopher Ticho has more.
Following the strategic meeting of the ruling RHDP party, chaired by President Alassane Ouattara, Jerome Patrick Ashi was chosen to succeed Adama Bictogo as Speaker of Parliament. Ashi replaces Bictogo, a close associate of the president, who held the position for 5 years. This change at the head of the National Assembly was not without political calculation. Yakuba Doumbouya is an Ivorian journalist and a political analyst.
The surprise is that, well, we didn't see Patrick Achi, and the others were really just speculation. But as things stand, it's clear and certain that at the end of the meeting, President Alassane Ouattara designated Patrick Achi as the RHDP candidate for the President of the National Assembly.
A senior civil servant, Patrick Asher, has been appointed to head departments and ministries at the national level for several years. A trusted advisor to President Ouattara, the appointment of the former Prime Minister to Parliament appears to be a deliberate attempt to ensure continuity, says Doumbouya.
Patrick Achi was at the IMF and was upon his return appointed by the President of the Republic. This is quite significant for the government's agenda, which is no small thing. When we looked at what was gradually gaining momentum, we were certainly justified in believing there was a real opportunity. Prime Minister Patrick Achi, politically speaking, has done a tremendous job with the army. Patrick Achi is someone who has managed to transform this region, once hostile to President Alassane Ouattara, into one of his strongholds. And for those who know Patrick Achi, his inclusion in the National Assembly is not a surprise, even if one might have expected him to be in another institution outside the National Assembly.
The new Ivorian Prime Minister will be announced in the coming days and will have to form a new government.
A report by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Marcel Ariston-Blé and presented to you by Christopher Aticho. In Liberia, legislative battle is brewing as calls intensify for the National Port Authority and citizens to keep the president's veto on a recently passed bill. The legislative instrument seeks to regulate and decentralize port operations. The bill, initially approved by Parliament, drew presidential scrutiny about the authority of the regulator and the governance gap in port management. The ongoing nationwide debate thus followed a reconsideration of the bill despite the president's earlier veto. From Monrovia, Abraham Parker reports.
In Thursday's petition, the MPA Workers' Union urged the executive mansion not to sign the revised bill, highlighting concerns about the implications of the Post Authority, the nation's economy, and maritime security. President Joseph Boakar's veto has cited a lack of clarity regarding the regulator's role, arguing that ambiguities could lead to overlaps, inefficiencies, or conflicts of interest. However, defending the bill, Mosurado County Senator Abraham Darius Dillon argued that the instrument would advance development.
I voted for this bill. It is good for the country. It will empower these counties and the people in those counties. It will bring about fair competition. It will bring about growth and development. We passed it before the president had some concerns. We went back as the two chambers. We believe we addressed the president's concern.
Speaking to WADR, Cole Famole, a former executive director of the Liberia Maritime, warned against the bill.
And I'm not sure who advised those who drafted the bill. It is disastrous for us in our relationship to the international community and also for business and us being ports of call for various shipping lines. It could also potentially affect our trade with other places.
The unfolding debate has put Liberia's maritime and economic prospects in the spotlight, with the Senate's repassage prompting renewed examination concerning the stakeholders, according for a measured approach to preserve ports, protect workers, local communities, and the national economy. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
And just before the break, let's take you to Nigeria, where state officials and citizens on Thursday commemorated the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Every January 15, Nigeria pauses to honor the courage and sacrifice of uniformed men and women who died protecting the country. In Abuja and across the state, wreath-laying ceremonies were held as the country renewed its commitment to peace and security. From Abuja.
Nigeria on Thursday marks the 2026 Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day, paying tribute to serving personnel and remembering fallen heroes who lost their lives in the line of duty. In Abuja, the Vice President Kashim Shettima led a wreath-laying ceremony at the National Arcade in the presence of top government officials, service chiefs, members of the Nigerian Legion, as well as widows and families of deceased soldiers. Similar ceremonies were held across states with governors or their representatives laying wreaths in honor of fallen officers and men. Speaking on the significance of the day, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Waidi Shaibu, said the remembrance goes beyond ceremony.
We remain committed to building an army that is combat ready, ethically grounded and resilient by succeeding in our present.
In Borno State, the Deputy Governor, Dr. Umar Kaddafour, alongside officials of other states, pledged continued collaboration with the military in the fight against insecurity.
Clancy has graciously approved the sum of 50 million naira for the 2026 Legion Emblem Week appeal, and also we reiterate our commitment to stand with the fallen heroes' family at all times.
For families of fallen soldiers, the day was both solemn and emotional.
Remembering them alone is not enough. A lot of people have been saying it. We need to take care of the living. We need to take care of the dead ones left behind.
God has been there for us, is always with us, and our children, and has been helping us also.
Armed Forces Remembrance Day is observed annually to honor Nigeria's military heroes and to remind citizens of the sacrifices behind the country's hard-won peace. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Chadian President Debbie Itno received the 2026 African Peace Prize Award for effective management of political and humanitarian efforts Over 400 fuel tankers arrive in Mali following months of hydrocarbon shortage. A new maritime bill in Liberia sparks nationwide debate, and Nigeria celebrates the fallen heroes on Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Still in the news, we have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. Ghana's Minister of Education has reaffirmed the government's position that the country's education system recognizes only biological definitions of male and female. The comment by Haruna Idrisu comes in the wake of a decision by the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment to withdraw a senior high school physical education teacher's manual following controversy over gender-related content. From Accra, Nadiri Tete reports.
The controversy centers on a section in a senior high school physical education and health teacher's manual that defines gender identity. Content critics say promotes the LGBTQI+ agenda in schools and should not have appeared in teaching materials used in Ghanaian classrooms. Following public backlash, the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment, NACA, ordered the immediate withdrawal of hard copies of the 2024 manual from circulation. Here is the Acting Director General of NACA, Professor Samuel Ofori Obobisa Bekwe.
As and when we get feedback and we go into the issues and there's the need for revision, we do so. So this particular issue has been resolved already before we got the information that is being in the media and some other people are making certain allegations.
The issue has also drawn a strong response from the minority in Parliament, which is calling for sanctions against the leadership of NACA, citing poor oversight and avoidable costs arising from the withdrawal and revision of the affected manuals. In response to the controversy and subsequent actions, Education Minister Haruna Idrisu has reiterated government's position on sex definitions in education. Speaking in Tamale, the minister stressed that the Ministry of Education recognizes only biological definitions of male and female and says this must be reflected in all educational materials.
There should be no ambiguity whatsoever regarding the definition of a man as in a man, a woman as in a woman, as in biological sex. And sex means biological sex, sex of a person at birth, settled. So in every educational literature in Ghana must reflect same.
The minister also dismissed claims that LGBTQI+ related content is being deliberately introduced into schools, describing such allegations as false and misleading. For WDR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
In other news related to education, Catholic Relief Services in the Gambia has launched a new project to promote disability inclusion in schools. The 30-month initiative aims to expand access to education for children with disabilities, train teachers, improve school facilities, and introduce technologies to support learning. The project is supported by the EU and is being implemented by CRS in partnership with the Gambia Federation of Disabled and key government ministries. As WADR's son Donald Mendy reports, the scheme is titled Disability Inclusive Pathways, Empowering Children with Disabilities Through Education, Technology and Play.
This project, according to Catholic Relief Services, CRS, is already showing results. So far, 60 teachers and 30 schools administrators have been trained and 12 schools are becoming more accessible. The project also seeks to support the National Rehabilitation Center and community outreach, covering 33 communities and registering 117 children with disabilities in Gambisara, Upper River Region. CRS Country Director Amulai Toure said the project is designed to address challenges faced by children with disabilities.
The project will strengthen the capacity of teachers. As we speak now, already 60 teachers are already being trained in inclusive development at the beginning of the project.
The Gambia Federation of the Disabled welcomed the initiative but know that significant gaps in the inclusion remain. Mohamed Kurbali is chairman of the federation.
Persons with disabilities are excluded in all sectors, including education, employment, healthcare and health services, transportation, rehabilitation, security, social protection, and many others.
Meanwhile, a Global Partnership for Education 2025 survey in the Gambia indicates that 38% of children with multiple disabilities are out of school, compared with 27% of children without disabilities. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Our guest is Kahu Fambule, a maritime expert and former executive director of the Liberia Maritime Authority. She joins us for a better understanding of a recent bill adopted by the Liberian legislature which seeks to decentralize port operations in the country. This is because since the passage of the instrument, workers of the National Port Authority, maritime experts and citizens alike have intensified calls for the president not to endorse it. They all cited concerns around the bill's economic and security repercussions. Similar points raised earlier by President Joseph Boakai. Boakai had vetoed the bill, stating it would create gaps that undermine effective port management. Let's join Kahu Fambule.
And I'm not sure who advised those who drafted the bill, but I was very happy when I understood that the president vetoed the bill for these very reasons. We can't violate IMO governance models that we have worked hard to participate in and be respected in. State control of ports, the safety oversight, the security and compliance, environmental protection issues, all of these things took a lot of hard work for Liberia to reach where we are as a nation and be respected among the community of nations, of maritime nations. This is regional. I mean, we're talking about the Guinea Current Commission. We're speaking of the entire International Maritime Organization, looks at our institutions, recognizes them, and respects them as they are. So not only is this not necessary, it is disastrous for us in our relationship to the international community and also for business and us being ports of call for various shipping lines. It could also potentially affect our trade with other places. And who's going to decide to come to a place that has a brand new regulator that has not established credibility?
The legislature has argued that the autonomous port will attract more foreign investment and improve efficiency. Where do you stand, especially a country like Liberia that is still developing?
So the legislatures, the lawmakers, the senators and representatives, they are obviously politicians, and they can say things. They have yet to prove in any way, shape, or form, or even lay out a plan of action on how they're going to achieve these benefits that they claim that this brings. I mean, those same benefits can be achieved under the current structure. The issue is not whether or not we can attract foreign investors. In fact, if you really examine it, the opposite is true. You're not going to bring good investment. You're going to bring clandestine investors, people who don't want regulation. If I cannot prove to the citizens how that's going to be achieved, it's just talk. And the Liberian citizens need to think sometimes when people make these promises, ask the hard questions. How is that going to be achievable under this new framework that's deregulated compared to the existing framework that's tried and tested? Why don't we as a country invest more money into our port infrastructure so that we can attract more business? That's the truth. The real way to attract business is for the country itself to invest in the infrastructure. What they're claiming they're doing is decentralization, and that is not what decentralization means. Decentralization is about making sure that services are localized and available to other parts of the country. So we already have 4 ports along our coast. That is, in fact, decentralization.
Considering the current regulatory maritime framework governing Liberia's maritime sector, what specific legal and institutional reforms you think are necessary, and how do you think Liberia can strengthen its regulatory capacity?
First thing is we need to define what autonomy means, because the counties themselves are not autonomous. We have a unitary state, not federal government like Nigeria or the United States of America. We have one government. So autonomy is almost a myth if you look at it in the context of the way they're framing this, because we're not federalizing our ports because we only have one government. So the president is still the president of the entire country. The lawmakers are lawmakers to the central government. They don't have any autonomy from the central government. So it just means that the port managers will have more control over the ports. They will have more control over hiring and ordering supplies and making those kinds of decisions.
The voice of Kawo Fambule, a maritime expert and former director of the Liberia Maritime Authority. In the sporting world, the Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2025 has rewritten the competition's history after becoming the highest scoring edition ever, with 120 goals already scored ahead of Sunday's final. The landmark figure surpasses the previous record of 102 goals set at the 2019 tournament in Egypt and underlines the attacking intent, technical quality, and growing confidence of teams across the continent. Several of the continent's heavyweights played leading roles in the scoring surge. Senegal, Nigeria, Morocco, and Cote d'Ivoire all showcased attacking depth, while emerging talent countered established stars for influence and impact. Among the highest contributors of goals to the impressive scoring record are some of Africa's top players, including Brahim Diaz of Morocco, who leads the scoring chart with 5 goals. He's closely followed by superstars Mohamed Salah of Egypt and Nigeria's Victor Osimhen, who have 4 goals each, and with both players involved in the third-place playoff, the top scorer going still for up grabs. With 2 matches still to be played, the record could yet be extended, capping a tournament that has consistently delivered entertainment, drama, and high-quality football. And that's it on this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. We are live online at wadr.org. Many thanks for listening, and special thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maojo Juve for the technical support. Let's continue this conversation on our social media platforms X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a repeat broadcast of WADR's series, It's You Speaking. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.